Have you ever had someone walk out of your life, leaving you broken and questioning everything? What if, years later, that same person came crawling back, begging for a second chance? Sounds like something out of a movie, right? Well, this is my story. A tale of heartbreak, revenge, and a transformation so powerful, it left her speechless. In the next few moments, I'll reveal how I went from being the man she left behind to the man she now can't live without. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. Let's dive in. I'll never forget the day she reached out to me. It had been 20 years, 2 whole decades, since she left me without a word, without a glance back. And there I was, sitting in the comfort of my home, when my phone buzzed with a message that changed everything. The message was simple yet powerful. Can we meet? For 20 years I had told myself that I was over it. The pain, the heartbreak, the feeling of being abandoned. It all seemed like a distant memory, locked away in a place I never thought I'd visit again. But when I saw that message, something inside me stirred. The past, my past with her, came rushing back, and I couldn't help but wonder, why now? Now you might be asking yourself, why would someone want to revisit a relationship that ended so badly? And that's exactly what I want to show you, because what happened next was something I never saw coming. What began as a simple encounter turned into a battle for control, for power, and yes, for revenge. It wasn't about getting back with her. No, it was about something deeper. It was about proving to myself, to her, and to the world that I wasn't the man I once was. That I was no longer the one who was left behind, the one who was forgotten. I was someone different now. Someone stronger. Someone who had learned over 20 years of pain and solitude that revenge didn't have to be bitter. It could be sweet, it could be transformative. You see, when she left me, she didn't just take my heart. She took my confidence, my sense of self-worth. But life, as it often does, gave me something in return. Over the years, I rebuilt myself. I worked hard, not just for success, but for something far more valuable: confidence. I found a power within myself that I had never known. And when that message came through, I knew. This wasn't just a chance to reconnect. This was an opportunity to make her regret the decision she made all those years ago. But here's the thing, I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't plotting some petty revenge. No, what I had was something much more valuable. I had something she wanted, something that would make her beg for me back. And that, my friend, is the secret. The secret that took me 20 years to uncover. The secret that turned me from the heartbroken man she left behind into the man who would make her wish she had never let me go. Now, I won't reveal everything just yet. I can't. But what I will tell you is this. The moment she saw who I had become, her world, her carefully constructed life began to crumble. It wasn't about playing games. It was about showing her the person I had become, someone she could never have imagined. And when she finally realized the truth, that I was the one she had been searching for all along, it was already too late. So what happened next? How did I go from the man who was abandoned to the man who now had the power to make her beg for me back? Well, stay tuned, because I'm about to share with you the next part of this unforgettable journey. And trust me, it only gets better from here. The day we met again was nothing like I imagined. I had played the scenario over and over in my head 1,000 times, what I would say, how I would look, how I would hold my ground. But when I saw her standing there, looking just as she did 2 decades ago, it felt like I was trapped in time. For a moment I forgot who I was. All I could remember was who I was back then, the version of me that was lost, broken, and waiting for her to return. She was still stunning, that much hadn't changed. But I noticed something this time, something subtle, yet unmistakable. She was nervous. Her smile was strained, her eyes darting around, avoiding mine. It was almost like she wasn't sure how to approach me, how to face the man she once left behind. I didn't make it easy for her. I stood there, arms crossed, silently watching her as she made her way toward me. The air between us crackled with tension, with unspoken words, with everything that had been left unsaid for so many years. "Hi," she said, her voice a little more fragile than I remembered. I didn't reply immediately. I let the silence hang there, thick and heavy. My heart was pounding in my chest, but it wasn't because of her. It was because I had finally realized that I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of her, not of the past. I had spent so many years running away from that moment, but now that it was here, I felt nothing. "Well," I said, my voice low, steady, "you wanted to see me." Her eyes softened for a brief moment, But then the mask came back on. I know it's been a long time, but I've been thinking about us. A lot. A lot. I couldn't help but scoff. Really? After 20 years, you want to tell me that? She flinched slightly at my words, but I didn't care. It was hard not to feel anger rise up within me, especially after all the time I had spent rebuilding my life, the time I spent learning to be someone different, someone better without her. But I couldn't let the anger take control. Not now. Not when I finally had the upper hand. I'm sorry, okay? I know I made a mistake, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I was young, and I didn't know what I was doing. But I've changed, I swear. I've been thinking about what we had, and how I messed it all up. I looked at her for a long moment, not knowing how to respond. She was sorry? That was it? 20 years, and all she had to offer was an apology? It wasn't enough. It wasn't close to enough. But then something inside me shifted. I remembered all the nights I spent alone, the nights I cried, the moments I felt worthless. I remembered how much I wanted to beg her to come back, to make her see how much I still loved her. But now here she was begging me for the very thing I once begged for. A second chance. But I wasn't that man anymore. I wasn't going to fall for it. I wasn't going to give in to the feelings that stirred within me, the feelings that told me to forgive her, to take her back. No, I had worked too hard to become who I was now, too hard to let my emotions decide my future. You know, I said, my voice cold. I spent a long time wondering what I did wrong. I blamed myself. But now I see it wasn't me. It was you. Her face fell, and I could see the guilt in her eyes. But there was something else too. A flicker of regret, of longing. It was clear now that she wasn't just apologizing because she felt sorry. She was apologizing because she missed me. She wanted me back. The power had shifted. I could see it in the way she held herself, in the way she spoke. For once, I was the one who was in control. And I wasn't going to let her forget that. You think you can just come back into my life like this? I asked, my tone sharp. You think an apology is going to fix everything? You left me. You left me when I needed you most. And now you think you can waltz in and ask for a second chance. She opened her mouth to speak, but I stopped her with a raised hand. I'm not the same man you left behind, I continued. I don't need you. I don't need anyone to complete me anymore. I could see the hurt flash across her face. It was exactly what I wanted to see. She needed to understand that I had grown, that I had become someone stronger, someone who didn't need to chase after the past. I've moved on, I added, my voice low but firm. And so should you. For a moment she just stood there staring at me, as if trying to process my words. And then finally, her lips parted in what could have been a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. You've changed, she said quietly. You're not the man I left behind. I nodded. No, I'm not. It was true. I wasn't the same man, and I would never be the man she left behind. But that wasn't what mattered anymore. What mattered was that I had finally realized my worth, that I didn't need her to validate me. I had built myself up from nothing, and I was proud of what I had become. As she stood there trying to process everything, I knew one thing for certain. She would never forget this moment. This was the moment she realized she had made a terrible mistake. But it was too late now. The game had changed. And she was the one who had lost. I could see the struggle in her eyes as she tried to process my words. It was as if she was searching for a way to make things right, to find the person I used to be, the person who would have forgiven her without a second thought. But I wasn't that man anymore. That version of me, the one who was eager to forgive and forget, was long gone. She stood there, silent for a moment, the weight of everything between us hanging in the air. Then, as if gathering whatever was left of her composure, she spoke. I didn't expect this, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I thought we could at least be friends again. I almost laughed at the absurdity of her suggestion. Friends? After everything that had happened? After 20 years of silence and pain? She thought we could just slide back into something as simple as friendship? No, I replied, my voice steady, though a part of me felt a sting. We're not friends. And we never will be. You don't just waltz back into someone's life after walking away like you did, and expect things to go back to normal. Her face flushed with embarrassment, and she quickly turned her gaze down, as if the weight of my words had crushed her, maybe even more than she was willing to admit. I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. I had spent years feeling sorry for myself, blaming myself for everything that went wrong. But now I was standing tall, stronger than ever, and she was the one who was broken, who was struggling to keep her composure. "I never meant to hurt you," she said softly, her voice barely audible, as if she didn't know how to make up for everything she had done. "I know," I answered, my tone softer now but firm. "But you did. And you don't get to undo that just by saying sorry." There was a long pause, the air thick with unspoken words. She was fighting the urge to cry, I could see it. The tears were right there, hovering on the edge, but she wasn't going to let them fall. It was almost like she was trying to hold on to whatever power she had left. But I could see it in the way her hands trembled, in the way her shoulders sagged slightly. She wasn't as strong as she wanted to appear. I wasn't sure why I felt a pang of sympathy for her. Maybe it was because I understood how regret felt. Maybe it was because I knew what it was like to look back on something and realize you had lost it all. But this wasn't the time for sympathy. Not when I had worked so hard to become someone unrecognizable to the person standing in front of me. I let the silence stretch for a moment longer, savoring the tension between us, before I finally spoke again. "You need to understand something," I said, my voice low and steady. "I'm not angry anymore. I'm not hurt. I'm indifferent." Her eyes lifted to meet mine, and I could see the confusion in them. It wasn't the reaction she had expected. She thought that after 20 years, I would still be holding on to the pain, still clinging to the idea that we could be something again. But I had moved on. I had rebuilt my life, and I wasn't about to let her waltz back in and disrupt that. "I've learned that I don't need you. Not now. Not ever," I said, my words deliberate, each one punctuating the finality of what I was saying. There was a flicker of something in her eyes, something that made me pause. Was it regret? Or something else? "Maybe you've moved on," she said, her voice almost lost in the noise of the street around us. "But I haven't. I've never stopped thinking about you. Not a day goes by when I don't wonder what could have been." The words hit me harder than I expected. A part of me wanted to believe her, wanted to think that deep down she had always cared. But the truth was, it didn't matter. It didn't change what had happened. It didn't change the fact that I had spent years of my life picking up the pieces of who I used to be, who I had to become to survive. "And that's the problem," I said quietly, almost to myself. "You've had 20 years to think about it, 20 years to figure it out. And now you want me to just pick up where we left off." She didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. I could feel her presence lingering, but I didn't want to drag this out any longer. I had made my point. I had shown her that I was no longer that desperate, insecure man who would bend over backward to please her. I had found my strength, and I was done. Turning on my heel, I began to walk away, the sound of her footsteps trailing behind me. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The power, the control was now in my hands, and I had no intention of giving it up. As I walked away, a strange sense of peace washed over me. The weight that had been pressing down on my chest for so many years finally lifted. I had confronted the past, faced the woman who had left me, and come out stronger. But little did I know this wasn't the end of the story. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. Because even though I had taken control, even though I had walked away, I knew deep down that this moment, this confrontation, was just the beginning. She wouldn't let go that easily, and neither would I. It had been a few days since that meeting, but the emotions lingered like an unshakable shadow. Every time I closed my eyes, I could still see her face, her eyes filled with regret, with a touch of something darker, something I couldn't quite name. I told myself I was done with it, done with her, done with the past. But the truth is, when someone has occupied your thoughts for so long, it's hard to simply erase them. I had thought that walking away from her, from everything we had, would give me peace. And in many ways it did. But there was a part of me, just a small part, that wondered, was she really as sorry as she seemed? Had she truly changed? Or was this just another chapter in her life where she needed closure? And I was the last thing left to fix? But no, I couldn't afford to go back down that road. I couldn't allow myself to fall into the same trap again. I had rebuilt my life, and I wasn't about to let her, or anyone else, tear it apart. I had learned the hard way that sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is to walk away. And yet, a question kept gnawing at the back of my mind. What would happen if I saw her one more time? I didn't reach out to her. She didn't reach out to me either. It was as if we had both agreed, in some silent, unspoken way, that the distance between us was too vast to bridge. But then I received another message. The words, simple as they were, hit me harder than I expected. I need to see you again. Please. I don't know why, but I agreed. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the lingering sense that I needed to know if she was truly genuine. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the old part of me, the part that once believed we could fix everything, that needed closure, that needed to see her one last time. When we met, I could tell right away that something was different. She wasn't the confident, put-together woman I had once known. She looked smaller, more fragile. There was a vulnerability in her eyes, something I hadn't seen before. It caught me off guard, made me pause for a moment. "I've been thinking," she started, her voice soft but unwavering, "about everything. About us. And I need to be honest with you." I raised an eyebrow, waiting. This time I wasn't going to interrupt. I wasn't going to say anything until she said what she came to say. "I was selfish," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I could have everything. I thought I could walk away and not face the consequences. But you were the best thing that ever happened to me. And I ruined it. I ruined us." For a moment there was nothing but silence. I watched her, studying her face, trying to gauge whether or not I should feel sympathy. But all I felt was a deep, unsettling emptiness. I had walked away from this version of her, the apology, the regret. I didn't need it anymore. She had her chance. And it wasn't just her. I had my chance to fix things, to hold on to the love we once shared. But I let it go. I had to. For my own sanity. And now, here she was, coming to me with words I had heard before, promises I had once believed in. But not anymore. Not now. I took a deep breath, the weight of the moment sinking in. I had spent so many years wondering why things ended the way they did, why she left without a word. I had spent years believing that if I just had the chance to see her again, if I just had the opportunity to confront her, it would all make sense. And now I realized it didn't matter. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about me. About the man I had become. "I think it's too late," I said, my voice steady, but with a finality that I could hear in my own words. "You had your chance. I gave you everything and you walked away. You can't just come back into my life and expect everything to be the way it was." Her face fell, and I could see the tears welling up in her eyes. But there was no turning back now. This wasn't about her. It wasn't about my past. It was about the future, the one I was building without her. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I was wrong." And in that moment I saw it. The real truth. She wasn't sorry because she truly loved me. She was sorry because she had lost. She was sorry because the person I had become, the man who didn't need her anymore, was the person she couldn't have. I had no desire to tear her down. I had no desire to hurt her. But the truth was I couldn't help her anymore. I couldn't be the man who picked up the pieces of someone else's broken heart. I had my own heart to protect now. "I need to go," I said softly, turning to leave. But then I stopped. Something inside me, something that had been buried for so long, made me turn back to her one last time. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said, my voice calm but resolute. "But it won't be me." I could see the pain in her eyes, but I couldn't feel it. Not anymore. The past had a hold on me for so long, but now it was nothing more than a shadow. Something I had left behind, something I would never return to. I walked away without looking back. But as I did, something inside me changed. I didn't just walk away from her. I walked away from the past, from the pain, from the self-doubt, from the broken pieces of who I used to be. And in that moment I finally felt free. The days after that meeting were some of the most peaceful I had ever experienced. There was no lingering bitterness, no anger eating away at me. Just a quiet sense of satisfaction. I had done what I needed to do. I had faced the past and walked away, stronger, wiser, and more confident than I had ever been. But as much as I tried to convince myself that I was done, that I had moved on completely, there was a part of me that couldn't help but wonder, what now? I had spent so much of my life consumed by the ghosts of what could have been, And now that I had finally let go, I was left with nothing but the weight of emptiness. It wasn't loneliness per se. I had learned to enjoy my own company over the years, but there was this nagging feeling, a void that I couldn't quite fill. It wasn't that I missed her, at least not in the way I used to. The version of her that existed in my mind was long gone, replaced by the woman I had just encountered, the one who had apologized too late, the one who had finally realized what she had lost. I didn't want her back, not really. What I wanted was something more. Something deeper. And I realized in that quiet moment of reflection what I had been searching for all along. It wasn't her love. It wasn't her apology. It was the love and respect I had never fully given myself. For years I had believed that my worth was tied to someone else, that if only I could get her back, my life would be whole again. But now, standing on the other side of all of this, I knew the truth. I was whole. I always had been. I just needed to see it. And so, I made a decision. A decision that would shape the course of my life in ways I couldn't yet predict. I was going to live for myself. For the first time in a long time, I was going to chase after my own dreams, follow my own path, and fill that emptiness inside me with something I had control over. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about showing her that I had moved on, or that I was better than I was before. It was about creating a life that I could be proud of. A life that didn't depend on anyone else's validation. As I started to focus on myself, things began to shift. I picked up old hobbies that I had let go of, things I had once loved, but had put aside when I was caught up in the chaos of our relationship. I reconnected with friends, laughed more, and allowed myself to be happy without any guilt. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of freedom that I couldn't quite describe. I realized that I had spent so much time worrying about her, about what she thought, that I had forgotten how to live for me. The truth was, I wasn't the same person I was back then. And thank God for that. But despite the peace I was starting to feel, there was still one question I couldn't shake. Why had she come back? I knew it wasn't just to apologize. No, there had to be something more. She could have lived her life, moved on, and never looked back. But instead she sought me out, made that phone call, showed up in front of me, asking for a second chance that I knew deep down she couldn't fully understand. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that it wasn't about me at all. It was about her. It was about the choices she made, the regrets she was carrying, the realization that she had lost something that she couldn't replace. I wasn't a part of her life anymore. I was a part of her past, something she couldn't fix, something she couldn't undo. And that, in the end, was the final truth I had to accept. She had lost me, and no matter how much she wished she could turn back time, no matter how much she regretted what had happened, the reality was that she could never have me again. I could have easily let her back into my life. I could have let the old feelings resurface, let the wounds reopen, and let her believe that everything could be okay again. But that wasn't who I was anymore. I had learned to let go, to leave the past where it belonged. And in doing so, I had found something much more valuable than love. I had found my own self-respect. As the days passed, I moved forward. My life began to fill with new opportunities, new experiences, and yes, new relationships. Ones that were built on mutual respect and understanding. But even as I embraced the future, a part of me couldn't forget the journey that had led me here. And so I walked forward, not with regret or bitterness, but with a quiet confidence that came from knowing I had done what was best for me. I had let go. I had moved on. And in doing so, I had reclaimed my life. It wasn't just about revenge. It wasn't about getting back at her. It was about realizing that I was enough all on my own. And that was the most powerful feeling of all. Months passed, and life seemed to fall into a rhythm that was almost peaceful. I woke up every morning knowing that I had taken control of my own story, that I was living for me now, not for anyone else. I had stopped wondering about her, about the choices she had made. I had stopped thinking about the what-ifs and the could-have-beens. And yet, sometimes, just in the quiet moments, her face would appear in my mind. But these moments no longer caused me pain or confusion. They were just reminders of how far I had come. One day, as I was sitting in my favorite cafe, sipping my coffee and reading a book, I saw something that made my heart skip a beat. It wasn't her. I had learned to stop looking for her in every crowd, in every situation. No, this time it was something else. Something more subtle. I saw a couple walking by, hand in hand. They were laughing, sharing a private joke, and it struck me. This was what it was supposed to feel like. It wasn't the dramatic passion that I had once thought love was. It wasn't about the intense highs and the painful lows. It was simple. It was easy. It was built on trust and respect, not need and desire. And it was in that moment, as I watched them walk past, that I realized something I hadn't fully accepted before. I wasn't bitter anymore. I wasn't angry. I wasn't waiting for an apology. I had come to understand that love doesn't always come in the form we expect. Maybe it wasn't the love I thought I wanted. Maybe it wasn't the love I had fought for all those years ago. But it was the love I deserved. And I wasn't going to settle for anything less. I put the book down and looked out the window, watching the world go by. The city was buzzing, but I felt a stillness inside. A peace that I had never known. For the first time, I felt truly present. I didn't feel the need to chase after anything or anyone. I didn't need her approval. I didn't need to prove anything. I had nothing to prove. But then, just as I was beginning to savor this newfound tranquility, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, and there it was, her name. It had been a while since I'd heard from her. After our last meeting, I'd expected things to be over between us, and I had made peace with that. But now, with her name flashing on the screen, I had to wonder what this was about. What did she want now? I picked up the phone, hesitating for only a moment before I swiped to answer. "Hello," I said, my voice steady, but there was a flicker of curiosity in me, something that was still unresolved. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and then, finally, her voice. "I'm sorry," she said, the words simple, but laden with something more. "I know I've said it before, but I need to say it again. I'm sorry for everything. For leaving you. For not being there when you needed me most." Her voice trembled, and for a second I felt the old pull. The pull to forgive, to let her back in, to give her another chance. But I knew better now. I had learned that forgiveness isn't always about the other person. It's about freeing yourself. "I appreciate that," I said, my voice calm but firm. "But I'm not the same person I was when you left. And I'm not the same person I was when we met again. I've moved on. And I've forgiven you. But I've also learned that I can't go back. Not to the past. Not to the person I used to be. And certainly not to the person I was when I was with you." She was quiet for a moment, and I could hear the sorrow in her breath, the regret that lingered in the silence. But I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. "I've spent a lot of time thinking," she said, her voice quiet now, almost as if she was talking to herself more than to me. "And I realized that I lost something precious. I lost the chance to build something with you. And I'll never get that back." "I know," I said softly. "But that's the reality of life. We all lose things. We all make mistakes. And sometimes we can't go back. But that doesn't mean we can't move forward." I could hear her exhale slowly on the other end of the line. It was a deep, heavy sound. And then finally she spoke again. "I just wanted to say, I hope you find everything you're looking for. I hope you find the happiness you deserve." Her words were unexpected, but somehow they felt right. This time I wasn't angry. I wasn't resentful. I wasn't holding on to any of the old pain. I was simply at peace. "I already have," I said quietly. "And I think you will too." With that, we both hung up. I sat there for a moment, staring at the phone, letting the weight of the conversation sink in. It was done. This chapter of my life was truly over. But instead of feeling empty or lost, I felt a sense of relief. I had freed myself from the past, from the pain, from the unanswered questions. I had learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go. Not for the other person, but for yourself. As I stood up to leave the cafe, I felt lighter than I had in years. The world was full of possibilities now, and I was ready to embrace them. I wasn't bound by anyone's expectations anymore, not even my own. I was free. And that was the most powerful feeling of all. The journey that began 2 decades ago had finally come full circle. I had spent years running from the past, consumed by it, believing that my life was incomplete without fixing what had been broken. But now, as I stood on the edge of a new chapter, I saw things more clearly than ever before. I wasn't the man who had once begged for a second chance, nor was I the man who had desperately hoped for answers to the questions that had haunted me for years. I had become someone entirely new, someone who understood that the most powerful thing you can do is let go. The past no longer had a hold on me. I wasn't holding on to old wounds, nor was I clinging to the memories of someone who had walked away. I had finally realized that the only person I needed to fight for was me. And that was the most liberating thing I could have ever learned. As I walked through the streets, the city buzzing around me, I couldn't help but smile. It wasn't a smile of arrogance or triumph. It was a smile of peace, of quiet strength. I was no longer defined by the relationships I had or the people who had once occupied space in my life. I was defined by my own choices, my own actions, and my own healing. I thought back to the last conversation with her, the final words we shared. It was a moment of finality, but also of understanding. She had apologized, but the truth was, there was nothing left to fix between us. We had both moved on in our own ways. And that was okay. I had learned that love wasn't about holding on to someone, about trying to fix something that had broken. It wasn't about asking for apologies or trying to prove a point. Love was about freedom, freedom to be yourself, to grow, to let go, and to trust that the right people would enter your life at the right time. As the days passed, my world began to expand in ways I never anticipated. New opportunities came my way, new relationships, new adventures. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't afraid to love, to open myself up to the possibility of something real. But this time it wasn't about seeking validation or filling a void. It was about experiencing life for what it was, without the need for anything more. I met new people. Some became friends, others perhaps more. But what I realized was that I wasn't looking for someone to fix me, to make me whole. I was whole. I always had been. The healing had come from within, not from anyone else. Looking back, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. Not for the pain I had endured, but for the lessons it had taught me. I had learned to stand on my own 2 feet, to build my own life, to reclaim my power. And that was worth everything. The pain, the heartache, the tears, they had all led me here, to this place of peace, of strength, and of undeniable self-love. There were times when I thought I wouldn't make it, times when I felt like I couldn't possibly go on. But I did. And now, looking out at the horizon, I could see everything that lay ahead with clarity. I was no longer bound by the past. I had freed myself. And in doing so, I had unlocked a future full of endless possibilities. The final twist to this story? It wasn't about revenge or proving someone wrong or getting back at anyone. It wasn't about making her beg for me. No, it was about the realization that the only person I ever needed to fight for was myself. And in that, I found the power to live the life I had always deserved. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly alive.